Well, and you mentioned the three guys that are considered, or at least, that world class players. I mean, I think maybe Donovan and Dempsey for sure have creeped closer to that definition just based on their play in the Premier League this last season. But what was really interesting to me over the last year and a half, maybe 2 years for Landon Donovan, was that transformation he made. And I don't know exactly when it hit him. And maybe since you're in that area and you cover the Galaxy so much, or I think you have sort of an inside eye on Landon in general. I have my own opinions on what transformed Donovan and what kind of clicked for him. But do you have your own insight into how did Landon Donovan become the player he is now? To me, it is a big change.
Yeah, you talk to anybody who's been around him for any stretch of time, and they'll tell you that he's just really grown and matured as a person. And I think I started to notice that sometime around 2008, where he kept saying certain things and talking about being a leader, and he just seemed to be at a different level even than he had been before. And I think before he was good, he was talented, and he seemed to have kind of it all together. But I think the Germany experience in 06 was really humbling for him.
Right.
And I think it kind of set him back. And even though he came back and had success in the Gold Cup in 2007, I think it wasn't until afterwards that he started to become the person that he is now. And I'm not sure if it was, looking ahead to this World Cup or, if he had some sort of target where he wanted to be, but he started to take on more of those intangible roles with the Galaxy, and he's so focused right now. He's talking to him about and I talked to him obviously many times before he left for South Africa,
right?
And it just seemed every time he just seemed to have an air of confidence around him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't being cocky. It was just being this is what I got to do, and we just have to do it, and the past doesn't mean anything, the future doesn't mean anything, it's about now, and I felt like he just gets it, he understands it, and he knows he's the guy, and he knows he has to perform, and
right.
I expect him to do that.
I kind of wondered, and there were all these rumors floating around, and I had my own little inside folks, but they talked about a number of things sort of piling up in Donovan's life at the same time. The divorce, the Beckham incident, that whole season, first season playing with Beckham, that was really kind of negative. And it just seemed like, to me, even though it was rumored that it was actually Beckham himself who said, hey, you should be playing in Europe. Beckham was one of the guys telling him, you're a great player. You can do anything you want. I don't know. I mean, did any of those things, did the divorce, I mean, do you have any inside scoop on sort of how those things affected his transformation?
Yeah, I think being around, and he's mentioned it before, being around David Beckham and seeing, how a true, world-class athlete, the world's most popular athlete, carries himself with when he's with the team, when he's on the field, when he's with his teammates in the locker room, things like that. I think that had a positive influence on him. Whether or not they were buds and they hung out and did things together or not, I think is beside the point. I think just he learned how to be more of a professional,
right.
and not just a professional, but a player who's counted on for great things for his country. The divorce kind of really came as a surprise to a lot of us because it was kind of quiet, and we heard maybe a few months after it had happened, and it was during the season, and so
right.
we were kind of like, well, it's just strange, you figure a guy's going through a divorce and personal problems like that, it might affect him at his work. And Landon had his best season last year for the Galaxy.
Yeah.
His best all-around season. And it didn't seem to bother him at all, and so I actually asked him about that I had an interview with him before he left, and
Yeah.
he said that that whole experience, that it made him a better person, and just knowing Bianca and, you know, having been married for just a few years, being with her and having her in his life, he said that taught her a lot. And I think the thing he said taught her the most was that she would really work hard. She didn't take anything for granted, and she worked hard for every single role.
Yeah.
And he said that, you know, there were times when you worked super hard for roles and you didn't get them. And he said, you know, that he kind of felt like he needed to put forth the effort like that because, you know, his wife had, and now his ex-wife had done so much to fought for every last role that, you know, that kind of had that rubbed off on him. So I think she did have a good influence, and it seemed like it's a good divorce for both of them, you know, to part ways, and it obviously hasn't really had an effect on him negatively anyways.
Right.
On the field.
And sometimes people just they have to go their separate ways. And, you know, it's not a topic that a lot of people talk about with Landon Donovan and his transformation, but it was such a positive experience for him rather than a negative one. It inspired him, and of course a lot of people in the past have blamed her because she was the one who said, I hate Germany and I want to move back to California, and you know, Landon, you know, used that in some way. I mean, I've read things that, you know, that was one of his unpublished impetus. It was a reason for him to leave Bayer Leverkusen and come back to the United States. It was just one of those things as a young kid he wasn't ready to handle. But he seems like he's ready to handle things now. And unlike Mexico in a lot of ways, the United States look like they do have players. I mean, you talk about Dos Santos, and Dos Santos, yeah, he got some playing time in Turkey, but he didn't get much playing time in the EPL. Where in the United States case, you have Bradley, you have Dempsey, you have Howard, you have Landon Donovan. You have guys that are getting a lot of regular minutes, and I haven't even mentioned Dolo as well. But does that make a big difference as far as how far the U.S. can take it versus how far Mexico can take this?
Yeah, I think there's going to come moments in games where that's going to make an positive factor for the U.S., that they have these guys who have played in big games. Obviously Clint Dempsey with Fulham making that run in the Europa League, and Landon Donovan stepping in, and, for Everton playing against the likes of Manchester United and, Chelsea, and having great performances against those kinds of teams. Tim Howard. I mean, these guys have played. They're playing at the highest level. They've played at the highest level on club, and together they've played at the Confederations Cup.
Mm-hmm.
The Gold Cup in 2007 was a good experience for them. So I think they've grown a lot in these last several years, both on their own clubs, individually, and collectively with the national team.
Right.
And they know what it takes to succeed, and they have that cohesiveness working for them. Whereas we look at Mexico, like you said, Giovanni Dos Santos is on his fourth club. Carlos Vela, he's not really playing a lot for Arsenal. And Guillermo Franco was on West Ham, kind of in that lineup, and had some decent performances. Javier Hernandez is not on Manchester United yet.
Right.
So with them, I think it's more promise and more what can happen. And with the United States, it's more with these players have proven it, and now it's just a matter of following up on their end of the bargain.